What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
Guys, today we are going to be breaking down what I think was probably one of the, if not the best bantamweight title fight in UFC history. Merab Dvalishvili retaining his belt against the undefeated Umar Nurmagomedov. We're going to talk technique. We're going to talk what's next for both guys, and we're going to ask the honest question: can anybody beat Merab? So, Nick, let's get right into it. You're great at these technical breakdowns and watching body orientations and what game plan somebody's implementing when they try to change it. What did you see last night out of Merab? Because this was a totally different fight than the Sean O'Malley fight. He fought very smart. He had a completely different game plan, but it really worked. What were your takeaways from the fight?
Yeah, leading up to this fight, I was really interested in seeing what version of Merab would come out. The Merab of old, who was pressuring everybody regardless of their skill set, or the one that came out against Sugar Sean and used no pressure to get Sugar to come to him. He brought the pressure, and it didn't really work out at the very beginning. You know, I predicted a second round finish for Umar Nurmagomedov, finding a guillotine, which he found himself right in that position in the second round. And I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I thought Merab would do, is wind up getting too brazen and look for the shots too much. And I believe that Merab felt that. He realized that he was going a little bit too gung-ho for those takedowns and showing them too often early on in the fight. And he just decided, you know what? I don't have a skill disadvantage when it comes to the feet. I'm going to make this guy deal with the storm that I bring. And I might not have the cleanest or the most powerful boxing or the best kicks out there, but I'm going to put a lot of them on you, and a lot of them are going to land. And the fact that Merab went out there, and especially later in the fight, but even in the early parts of the fight, was outstriking Umar was so impressive to me. Merab, he's just a different animal. He's a different breed.
He's the machine.
He's the machine. I believe the strength that Umar and these guys have is above everybody else's that you can find on the roster. I think Merab's is actually far stronger because of the way he was able to utilize that grappling in the fight against Umar. Now, Umar is so hard to control on the ground, and those Dagestani fighters, they will not concede a bad position. They're just going to scramble, and that's why at the beginning of the fight, we saw some cool scrambles. You know, like a takedown that kind of sat one of them on the butt, and then they rushed right over, and Umar tried to clamp onto him. He looked like an eagle's claw around his a fish or something when he finally got a hold of Merab. I think he really did want to do a lot with that position, but Merab was able to stand up about 30, 45 seconds later, and I think that Umar saw that as an opportunity to really secure top position and win that first round. When Merab stood right back up, it was more exhausting for Umar to get back up, and that was sort of the story, the underlying story of this fight was Merab is the machine. He's going to be fresh in the championship rounds if Umar can if he can last that long, and that's exactly what happened. Umar went out there and he gave it everything he got in the first few rounds, but when that Merab storm starts to show up and Umar started to gas out because everything he shows is so explosive and so big, all the kicks, everything he throws, he puts a lot of energy into. When I started to see Merab notice that the cardiovascular aspect of Umar was going down, and he realized, okay, I'm not going to be able to control this guy on the ground that much, but in the world of MMA in these days, a takedown does count for something, and he's trying to take me down a little bit. He even tried to take Merab down first in the very beginning of the fight. But what I love Merab doing was he decided to flip the script on everybody. He didn't go out there just to look to hold him down, and he didn't go out there to just strike with him. He was like, I'm going to strike with this guy. I'll try to control him when I can. I'm going to control the entire fight, not just a position. And then what was really impressive was he was just getting takedowns to score the takedowns. He knew that George St. Pierre's takedown record in a title fight was within arm's reach of him, and that's why he just started tripping Umar and letting him get back up. He ended up breaking the record by a couple of takedowns, which is super impressive because the guy he's fighting, Yeah. I don't know who George St. Pierre did it against, but his last name was not Nurmagomedov. So
right.
You have to take that with a grain of salt because Merab Dvalishvili just did the unthinkable. And I'm really interested in talking about what's next from Merab and who can beat him, because after what we saw and leading up to this fight, we were saying Umar is the hardest fight in the division as it sits right now. I still believe that to be true, and what we saw the champ do to the number one contender in Umar was pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, I'm very well said. And
thank you.
Certainly, if you were to ask me who do you think the one of the least likely fighters that George St. Pierre's all-time takedown record would be broken against? I would say probably Umar, because he's not a guy who gets taken down. So it's kind of ironic to me that the record for the most takedowns was secured by a fighter who was fighting Umar Nurmagomedov.
Crazy.
And before I give you my technical analysis, I must just say one of the coldest pictures in all of MMA was when Merab took Umar down in Khabib's corner, and you see him kind of locking that top position, locking the legs of Umar and working some ground and pound with Khabib and the rest of the team, Javier, screaming for Umar to get back up to his feet. I mean, that's not an image that you see all that often in Nurmagomedov on the ground with somebody else taunting to a certain degree them on top position. So really cool. But what did Merab do right? He took the fight to Umar. He actually engaged with him in the striking, and he timed the in and outs really well. Yeah. He knows that Umar's a fighter, as you said, he's that Soviet-style striker. Now, boxers we're talking about, we say Soviet-style, but he adds the kicks and stuff like that into it. Very in and out, very light on their feet, covering a lot of ground, getting out of range. And Merab was timing that really well, and he wasn't expending all of his energy trying to take and hold Umar down. He realized he got the crowd behind him. Every time he took Umar down, the crowd went nuts. I mean, nobody ever sees these guys from Dagestan get a taste of their own medicine, and Merab was giving that medicine to Umar, and it was causing an eruption in the crowd. And so he realized, like, I don't need to hold this guy down. They may actually turn on me if I hold him down. So guess what? I'm going to boom 1, 2, 3 and take down just like nothing. And then I'm going to step back and make him stand up, and then I'm going to do it again. It was brilliant. The game plan and the strategy was absolutely brilliant for Merab. And the only way to beat Merab is it's very hard to finish him, if not impossible, and you're not beating him in rounds 4 and 5. No. There's one way to beat Merab Dvalishvili, and it's to win rounds 1 through 3. Yeah, absolutely. Mathematically, that's the only way that you can beat him. And Umar came close to it, and I want to talk about the decision because Umar thought it was a bad decision. Yeah. Umar won 2 of the first 3 rounds in my book. Yeah. But in order to beat Merab, you've got to win the first 3 rounds, and you've got to do it in dominant, clear fashion. Right. And so that brings me to the next question. And guys, before we finish up this video, I want to talk about the fact that most of you that watch our content are not subscribed to the channel.
What's up with that?
Guys, we are on a mission to get to 10,000 subscribers. If you enjoy the content, a subscribe goes a long way as far as helping us out. Now let's get back to the conversation.
Thank you.
Do you think that was a decision that could be called into question? Because Umar said that he needs to watch it back, but he does not feel like he lost that fight. And much to my surprise, because spoiler alert, I think Merab clearly won that fight. Yes. A lot of people on social media were saying that, actually I had it 3-2 for Umar, and I'm not seeing a case for that. Are you?
No, this is one of those situations where Umar is so close to the trees that he can't see the forest. Or vice versa. He, being in the fight, you really don't have a good understanding. Oftentimes, fighters don't know what round they're about to go into or what round they just got out of. It's a very taxing situation on the body and the mind, and he was getting touched up. So, obviously his brain isn't at 100% capacity where it needs to be. I think when he goes back and watches this fight, his eyes are going to be opened because Merab really controlled that fight. And look, when you go down to scoring this sport, we do go round by round, but there is a story of the fight, and the story of the fight is from the first bell to the last bell, and every bit of body language that takes place in the rounds and in between the rounds. And Merab's body language, his talks with the corner in between, they weren't talks of concern. The talks that Umar was having with Khabib were very much of concern. They didn't like the way the fight was going, and Merab, I can't emphasize this enough. Merab understands that he's not the technical, most skilled fighter on the planet, but he knows how good he is. He knows how tenacious, he knows how strong, and he knows how good his grappling is. And I just think that Merab went out there going, I'm not going to try to take this fight and control it in one position because I don't think I'm better than him in just one position. I think if I make this an MMA fight, if I make it a storm that's hard for him to weather, he's going to wind up showing some kinks in his armor. And that's exactly what happened. Umar started to fade a little bit, and then the striking, the quality of his strikes went down a little bit, and then he started to get a little bit more desperate for the takedowns. And now we understand that apparently he broke his hand in the first or second round, and that's why he was shooting for more takedowns. But when your hand's broken and you're in a title fight for the UFC, sometimes you just
Throw
got
it.
you just got to ball that thing up. You're probably going to have a baseball mitt for a hand for the next couple weeks, but you just got to do it. You just make that sacrifice. And I think there were a couple of issues in Umar's game plan, and I think maybe he underestimated Merab a little bit. I think he thought that there was a sizable difference on the feet, and there wasn't that much of a difference on the ground. And the reality is, when you underestimate anybody in a fight, whether it's a fighter as a whole or just one of their disciplines, oftentimes that's where you wind up getting exposed. Conor McGregor and Khabib is the most obvious example. Conor McGregor should have never been dropped by Khabib, but the fact that he was able to show so many different options with the takedowns, the threat of the takedown was enough to knock Conor McGregor down. So these are the types of things that Merab just decided to bite on his mouthpiece and make it a dogfight. Make Umar uncomfortable. Make Umar walk backwards. Take that stoic look off of a Dagestani fighter's face and just make them go through the same stuff that they make,
everybody else
go through. Yeah. So, I love Umar. I'm a major fan of Umar. I thought he would win that fight. And honestly, if they fight again, I would probably go Merab, but Umar knows what he did wrong in this fight, and I think he knows how he could adjust. All that being said, though, I don't really know if there's anybody at 35 that can beat Merab. I think the confidence that he's going to have going into his next camp after beating, in my opinion, the number one top contender and the hardest matchup stylistically for him, I think it's going to be a breath of fresh air for him to get a call that he's fighting Sugar Sean next, or he's fighting Petr Yan again, or he's fighting whoever it is that he's going to fight. I have a feeling he's going to be like, all right, a sigh of relief, because that's not Umar Nurmagomedov, and I just made quick work of him. I'd like to see how my next contender, my next opponent is going to do against Umar. So, yeah, I think Merab's that guy.
Yeah, Merab is definitely that guy. And one last thing before we wrap. If Umar does want to have a shot at beating Merab again, he's got to address the cardio.
Yes.
You have to become the cardio machine that Merab is to have a chance, because Umar, had he not faded and he was able to steal round 4, we could be talking about a 3-2 for Umar.
Right.
But from minutes 16 to 25, Umar was done.
Yeah.
And I actually thought that he could have potentially been really damaged, maybe 10-8 in the 5th round, but he was able to keep himself somewhat composed, but he was gassed and Merab was just getting started. I feel like Merab could have gone 10 rounds. So the skills are there for Umar. He's got all the skills he needs to compete with Merab. He did compete with Merab. It was a great fight. It was one of the best bantamweight fights I've ever seen.
Yep.
But the cardio was the factor, and you have to become a machine to beat the machine. It's really crazy.
Yeah, well, Sugar Sean's in for a hard one, because I assume the UFC is going to make that rematch next because they want the belt around Sugar. But after last night, you can probably bet the house on Merab.
I think so.